How's it going, guys? Mike here on the Tressa's Collectibles channel, here to bring you guys a deck profile for the Lycoris Recoil deck that I piloted at the BCS 24-25 Pasadena regional event that just happened this weekend. Now, obviously, Lycoris Recoil is not necessarily a set that one might think is super competitive compared to the hard hitters in the meta right now. However, as I was prepping for Pasadena, I didn't really want to just bring what I thought was the best, but I wanted to bring something that I thought would be very fun. I wanted to bring something very fun, but also something that did give me a chance to succeed. And one thing led to another, and it led to me using Lycoris Recoil. So how did I get started? I was talking to my friends in our group chat this past week, and I brought up this Japanese deck list with obviously the upcoming premium booster cards that are already released in Japan. And they have this really interesting level 0 line that has seemingly been very popular in Japan recently. It consists of a 3-card package involving meeting her sister Chisato, father figure Mika, and father figure Shinji. Now, these are all actually set 1 cards, obviously, as they're in English, they're all commons. What they do is, the Chisato is a 1k, and then on play, I can discard a treated character to search my deck for either the father figure Mika or father figure Shinji. And then if both are on the board, Chisato gets 2k. The Mika and Shinji are also just have additional effects when they're both on the board. The Mika, as long as I have Shinji on board, he gives all of my other characters with Chisato in name 500 power. And then the Shinji gives all of my other Chisato pay 1 pseudo encore. Separately, Mika also has, when I play Climax, I can pay 1 to look at up to the top 4 cards of my deck, add a traded character, and then Shinji has Startup, Rest himself, give one of my characters 2,000. Now that's obviously a lot to take in, but at the same time, are any of these effects really that great? What you essentially have is a double backrow, plus a Chisato, which is 3k by herself with two dads, and then 500 global from Mika, so she's 3,500, and then she has pay 1 pseudo encore. Is that really that good? You know, I think especially with the really good level 0 options in Lycoris Recoil, the Majima level 0, you have 4k JC with the double rare Takina. Lycoris Recoil's issue with being competitive with set 1 was never really the level 0 game, right? So, why this package? So we asked ourselves that when we saw the new premium list that have been floating around in Japan. So I borrowed Simu's cards to test that deck at a locals, and it actually turned out to be pretty decent and really fun. I think part of the enjoyment I had was just being able to kind of just say father figures Lycoris Recoil, and you just kind of like no one really knows what's going on, and the people that do know are just like really amused by the fact that I can just say like, you know, father figures is kind of just like a cool term, right? Not something that you would expect in Weiss. But I played that new build with the premium cards, with the swimsuit finishers that has new support, and it actually felt pretty good. I'm not going to say that's the end-all be-all for Lycoris premium builds, but it definitely, I can see why Japan has been liking it quite a bit. So having tested that, I really wanted to find if I could potentially see if there was something there with a set 1 Lycoris Recoil father figures deck. So since the entire package is actually all set 1, I got to cooking. And this video is going to cover, it's going to be a deck profile, but more so in the sense that it's going to cover how I came to putting my 50 cards together. telling you guys the thought process behind my choices, how I came to putting things together, my testing process, so on and so forth. So it's going to be a bit more unconventional compared to our regular scripted deck profiles, but hopefully you guys enjoy what I'm going to have to say. I'm not really sure how long this is going to be. I tend to sometimes be a bit overzealous and kind of just go on and on, so I think this might be like a 30-40 minute video. We'll see in post, but let's get started. So my objective was to build a competitive Lycoris Recoil deck, as competitive as I can make set 1 English Lycoris Recoil using this package, Father Figure and the Chisato Bonder. So starting from the climax combos, I started from level 3, and I was thinking about the level 3 climax combos in Lycoris Recoil. You have the Swimsuit, Takina, and Chisato package, which for all intents and purposes is a fine finisher set. It heals, you have double salvage, and it can potentially blow out your opponent with the Swimsuit Chisato's ability to mill the top card of your opponent's deck. That can potentially be a climax, and then you attack 5 times and potentially mill climaxes and burn sometimes. However, it's not the most consistent. I would say it has a very high ceiling, but it can also have a fairly low floor. Whereas when you attack with the Chisato Restand, you could potentially just mill a non-climax card, and then that just gets them closer to a cancel. So while the popular premium booster finishing option is still Swimsuit, Chisato, and Takina, because they did get new support in the premium booster, with only set 1, I did not feel like that was competitive enough to consistently close out games. So looking over the other options, I came to the decision that I would play the level 3 Takina StockSoul finisher. This level 3 Takina is all gas, but really needs a lot of support. She doesn't have an on-play effect of any sort. She doesn't heal, she doesn't cantrip, and she only has one effect, and it's her Climax combo. Climax combo on attack with the StockSoul. Pay 3, discard 2 traded characters to burn 3 twice. Just very straight up, very straightforward. Burn 3 twice, as long as you can pay the cost, which is very hefty. Pay 3, discard 2 traded characters on attack. Makes it very inconsistent to be able to have enough stock and hand, not only in terms of hand size, but the correct hand. Because you can't discard climaxes, you can't discard events. So there's a reason why this finisher is just not used basically ever when we're thinking about competitive Lycoris Recoil decks. Simply, the trade-off for the high damage output is not worth all the loops that you have to jump through. The poor trigger, the fact that it is a StockSoul at level 3, means that like it's not something that you're going to be playing very often, because your level 1 combo is probably going to be the climax that you're playing more. Early game advantage StockSoul and StockSoul climaxes are really strong, because that's the climax you want to play the most often, and that can also just generate you more stock. But StockSoul level 3s are just not as good in comparison, because you're generally only going to be playing that once or twice a game, and that one time being the final turn. So a non-plussing trigger on a climax finisher that doesn't plus or heal and has a very prohibitively expensive cost. How do we make this work? I decided that I would need to use this finisher if I wanted to give myself a good chance of doing well, right? So how do we make this package and this package work with what set 1 has to offer? To do that, I had to think of ways to shore up the weaknesses of these cards, as well as take advantage of the strengths of these cards. So let's start with the level 0 package. How do we abuse this level 0 package? Well, first of all, we can consider the fact that all Chisato characters in name, not only the Bonder, get pseudo encore. So the best level 0 to pair with that is Clean Cut. The Chisato Takina Clean Cut is 2500 and 1 level, and also has the Clean Cut effect. Not a card that you would normally see in traditional level 0 Lycoris Recoil lists, but a card that fits what we need very well. The best thing about this father figure package is that it is hyper competitive at level 0. It has the ability to challenge the majority of level 0 boards. If we just look at the Chisato plus Shinji Mika, it's a 5/5 beater with a tap 2k. But more importantly, it can allow us to make our Clean Cut 5k. 2/5 by itself, 500 global from the Mika, and then tap the Shinji to make it 5k. So a common line then becomes, you would have Mika, Clean Cut, Shinji the backrow that tapped the Clean Cut, and then you can just have a third lane, like a third attacker, like the Chisato or something, and then you can just really easily tri-field and just gain a lot of advantage that way. You +1 from a Clean Cut, and then you plus another one from pseudo encoring the Clean Cut, so that you can just abuse the Clean Cut next turn, and then you just farm advantage this way. The other big downside of running this package, outside of the inherent slots that this package takes up, so obviously we are not going to be having any slots for any of the traditional good cards, JC, Majima. You have, like, some people run a lot of Taki, some people like to run a lot of Takina stock bombs. We can't run any of that. We have no room. Most importantly, we also just don't have room in our back row for the most part for brainstorms. Obviously, this is a double card package, and if one is missing, the other just is not as effective. Where are we going to fit our brainstorms? Without brainstorms, we don't have selected advantage. We lack deck mill. There's just a whole lot of issues with that, right? The solution, after looking through the set, is the 2-2 event. This 2-2 event allows us to salvage 1 Chisato and 1 Takina, and give one of our characters 3000 power, and then reveal the top card of our deck. If it's a level 0 or lower character, it goes to stock. This is a way for us to, while having a not great way to sculpt our hand, be a 1-card hold that can turn into really useful things that we are looking for. Most importantly, naturally it can grab our finisher, but as I'm going to go through the rest of the list, you'll also see that there are a lot of other good Takinas and some really crucial Chisatos that we can salvage that can turn our hand from being just a random mess off of whatever we top check or off of whatever we just draw for turn into a perfectly sculpted hand ready for the endgame. Now, how do we actually accommodate the resources needed to not only have enough stock to play these 2-2 events comfortably and have the rest of our game plan, and also accommodate the fact that these are just extremely expensive? How we just talked about how they don't cantrip, they cost 3 and discard 2 characters. How can we afford this? We afford this by playing this 2-1 Takina. This 2-1 Takina is a dual laner, meaning she has beneficial effects as long as I have only 1 or less fewer characters in my front row. Takina in particular, they become 10,000 power as long as I have 1 or less other front row characters. And then at the beginning of my attack phase, if this card is standing and I have 1 or less other front row characters, I may put up to the top 3 cards of my deck into stock. Blind stock 3 per copy of Takina. If I have 2 copies of Takina, I can blind stock 6 before my attacks. Plus the 2 attacks that we just do normally, and that is a net 8 stock we generate, or plus 6 stock if we account for having to pay 1 stock per Takina. If we have enough time to do Takina over the course of 2 turns, it is not out of reason for one or both of these to live as they are both 10k level 2s. Not super easy to deal with. then if we go for another round of stock charge, that is basically just infinity stock, where we're just going to have more than enough stock to play 1 or even 2 of these events, plus anything else that we want to pay for, plus the stock resources needed for multiple Takina and other friends. So this becomes our level 2 game. Now, what is the weakness of this level 2 game? And why don't people consider this to be normally competitively viable? It's because Duel Laner has an extreme weakness, an extreme downside, where you don't get to attack 3 times per turn. Obviously, Weiss Schwarz is a game about attacking as many times per turn in order to generate the most resources stock-wise, and to, most importantly, deal the most amount of damage that you can per turn so that your opponent reaches level 4 before you do. Now, we have the stock covered, but how are we going to come back from the fact that we are only attacking twice per turn and theoretically our opponent is just getting a huge damage lead on us? Well, besides the fact that double Takina or triple Takina or things like that has level 2 reach, you also consider that what I realized is things actually worked out very well because of the hyper aggressive and consistent level 0 game. As long as you can get father figures up and you just keep abusing clean cut, most games you actually just get off to a fairly decent damage lead in the early game. Your opponent oftentimes is not actually able to contest your entire board, and if they do contest your entire board, you can just pay 1 encore. It makes it so that it's a deck that has a very high floor at level 0. A high floor in terms of being able to be very aggressive, tri-lane, and consistently have advantage without needing any sort of climax combos or anything like that. All you need is to find one of each, and then you can just throw a bunch of level 0 beaters in the front row, and then that's that. What I kind of just realized through testing and kind of just theory is that because of this package, the downside of attacking twice at level 2 is largely mitigated. And also, in a sense, I actually want to do less damage at level 2 because I want myself to hit level 3 before my opponent. With the nature of the blind stock, obviously, I have no control over what goes in my stock. It could be very clean, it could have 4 climaxes, right? You just don't know. But that doesn't matter if your opponent doesn't have these damage output to kill you. So if you hit level 3 first and you have like 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 stock, it doesn't matter if that's dirty or not. You just win the game. So, what I quickly figured out after kind of thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of all these cards, I realized that it actually can maybe work. You know, so like at this point in my brainstorming and at this point in my deck building, I was like, okay, I think there's probably something here. I'm not sure, but I'm going to spend more time iterating. So, you know, like, I think about a lot of deck ideas, and some things I kind of just think about maybe start putting cards in deck log and see if we have like a playable pile of cards. A lot of times we don't. Sometimes we do. So, how do we iterate on this concept? One thing that we haven't talked about yet is our choice of level 1 combo. Now, the most prevalent level 1 combo in Lycoris Recoil is, for set 1, the Takina Chisato double rare pants combo. On attack, climax combo, middle 2, salvage level extra lower, and then top check 2 from your own deck and rearrange. It's a really powerful combo. It allows you to rig your triggers. It controls your leveled mill for your next Chisato and Takina. It's on a pants, so it promotes a very good play a climax every turn, push damage, that kind of thing, which theoretically should line up pretty well with our game plan, right? Of just being very aggressive early game and then having good sculpting through the mill 2 to be able to salvage our pieces for the late game. But that's not what we're playing. What we're playing is the level 1 door climax combo. Welcome to LycoReco. There's several reasons why I chose this combo over the other combos. One, I'm gonna state my reasons from most influential to least influential. The most influential reason, the number one reason I chose this combo, is because her climax combo of on attack top check 4 add up to 1 traded character, or the 2/2 event. This climax combo can actually grab the event from her top check 4, making it a very consistent way for us to grab the event, which then guarantees us the sculpting that we need for our mid to late game. Additionally, second reason, the trigger is actually very ideal. I need as much sculpting as I can get. The 2/2 event carries a lot of weight. However, I want to be able to save the 2/2 event for when I really need it, and being able to give myself the chance of incidental door triggers and allowing me to perhaps salvage a 2/1 Takina here and there, maybe salvage some utility that I needed, is really, really good. And I would much rather trigger door than I would rather trigger pants and being able to salvage only another pants or a StockSoul. So the trigger is very premium in this list. Third, the double word climax combo, the door climax combo also has the additional effect attached to the climax combo where I can choose one of my opponent's characters, and then until the end of their next turn, they can't move to another position. This is especially good against standby. Naturally, traditional standby decks standby out a big character in their back row so then they can move it to the front row the following turn. You stun their back row, they just didn't do anything. They just don't get to do anything that turn. So in particular, I was very incentivized to use this combo. Also, extra incentivized because Nino is a very popular deck. And anything that I can do to get an upper edge against, popular decks, I would definitely take. I think this deck is inherently favored against most standby decks anyways, just because of its ability to push damage, and for standby decks' inability to push damage when I am potentially very vulnerable. But obviously Nino is the big standby deck out there, and I think this does pretty well against Nino, just to really mess up their level 0, level 1 game. Most Nino players are probably going to standby out in the back row just to be safe, so that they don't get reversed when their opponent hits level 1 and they just -1 on their 1/1 climax combo for fun. They'll traditionally stand by out in the back row, and then you hit level 1 and you just stun their 1/1, and then that 1/1 just doesn't do anything. So this combo just kind of filled a lot of check marks that I was looking for the deck. Incidentally, it grabs the 2/2 event. It's on my most preferred trigger. It gives me a bit of deck speed where the deck normally lacks deck speed. I don't value deck speed in this deck super highly, but it's there. We would still like to play some good old-fashioned fundamentals of when the opportunity presents us, we would like to refresh at level 1 and get decent compression rather than hitting level 2 first deck. But in this deck, it's not that big of a deal, but it's there. So, having said all that, let's reconsider our original stance on the weaknesses of the cards that we really wanted to play. Father figures, we have no back row slots, so we have no brainstorm that we can normally put for our selectivity. We've fixed that by using the 2/2 and the 1/0 combo, which can basically get us the cards we need. The level 3 combo does not have an on-play effect and requires tons of resources. We fixed that by using dual laners. And dual laners also promotes the strategy of keeping my opponent at level 2, controlling their damage intake, and then being able to blast them from a level and a half away. We fix our hand issue, again, through the 2/2 event. And after that, we have our major problems kind of ironed out. A lot of this also is still kind of just very theoretical at this point. And a lot of these points that I have been telling you guys have just been points that I kind of realized myself as I did more testing, and honestly as kind of BCS Pasadena went on. But how are we going to round out the rest of the deck? So here, let's go over a more traditional deck profile and lay out everything in a more organized form. So we have our, starting with level 0 game, we have our Father Figures package 433. We don't need to run 4 copies of each because they're searchable. You really only need to open 1 copy of Chisato and any one of the 6 Father Figures, so you can kind of count this as just one large playset of cards, because the Chisato will be able to search out the Father Figure that you don't have. So 3 of each is just perfectly fine. I've found it to be very consistent when aggressively mulliganing for it in our level 0 game. 4 copies of Clean Cut, because Clean Cut is our premier level 0 attacker. We always want to see a Clean Cut. If we see Father Figures and Clean Cut, then it's basically the most that we can ask for. Going on to the other level 0s. So we talked about how there's no room in our back row for brainstorms. Now, initially I thought that was just very crippling. And to an extent it is. However, I then realized that if I play my cards right, I could transition into my level 2 game with the dual laners and have my back row 99% of the time actually be this back row. Mika and the Chisato top check 3 brainstorm. Shinji just has to go. Most games I take 1 turn before level 2 and I just throw Shinji in the front row to attack with. The primary goal of the Father Figures package is to dominate the level 0 game and maybe have 1 turn of relevance at level 1. What often happens is that I will go into level 1, push up Shinji, unless I need to use his tap for power. You kind of just play it by ear. Or you basically push one of the Father Figures up. Sometimes it's Shinji, sometimes it's Mika, but you prefer it to be Shinji. And then you just have 1 empty back row, and then if you have your brainstorm, you'll just play it down. If you don't have your brainstorm, you kind of just leave it empty for the time being. Leaving your back row empty is also fine because you can just keep abusing Clean Cut. But for the most part, you are okay now transitioning into your level 2 game, giving up 1 of your back row. It's not that important anymore. You've already gotten your value by dominating the level 0 game. So, we play 2 copies of Chisato Top Check 3 Brainstorm. This is the most important brainstorm over the Kurumi brainstorm, which is a salvage brainstorm, because this is your most consistent way of finding climaxes and vents, right? So, because of the Top Check 3, we give ourselves just as much percentage points as possible to find unsearchable cards. So, obviously, because the 3-2 Takina doesn't have an on-play effect, how are we going to get a StockSoul? Generally speaking, it's just going to have to depend on your judgment call. Sometimes transitioning into mid-game and you find a StockSoul in your hand. Sometimes I keep it, depending on the situation at hand. If I'm already in a damage lead, then I just hold it. If I'm in a damage deficit, I might play 2 Takina dual laners, and then I'll actually just slam the StockSoul. But you can play it by ear. Most importantly, though, you do want to give yourself the opportunity to just re-find the StockSoul on your further turns. So this is really important. 1 Kurumi, just in case. Now, this deck actually has a very big issue in terms of names. So, Chisato is actually very ideal because of her name, not because of the Father Figures being able to give her Encore. Like, we never attack with the Brainstorm, but it's important for her to be Chisato because of the 2-2 event. You have basically, you're always going to be salvaging from your Takina name salvage, the dual laner if you don't already have 2 dual laners, 3-2 Chisato if you don't already have 2 or 3-2 Chisatos, and then sometimes we'll salvage the free fresh counter. That's basically it, but that's all you ever really need for Takina, these 3 cards. So Takino, you have your covers, your bases covered. But what are we going to salvage with our Chisato name? Looking through the Lycoris Recoil set 1 deck list, or set 1 set list, for what we want to fill our rows in this particular deck, there's not actually that many good Chisato cards. Fortunately, the Brainstorm is one of them, so 100% of the time basically, if I play the 2-2 event or when I reach level 2 and I don't have the Brainstorm already, the first event is always going to go towards getting a Brainstorm. And then that would be the way that you can consistently set up your ideal level 2 mid-game to late-game back row. We have the one copy of Kurumi just in case we need the Salvage Brainstorm. It's not very grabbable. It's very hard to get on demand. But we do have several ways. One of the ways is through this level 0 Chisato, the next level 0 in our list. She has 2 on-play effects. On play, we can discard a traded character to draw 1 card. And the second effect is we can discard a climax on play to salvage any character. So, another card that does not see too much play in LycoReco, maybe as a one-of in traditional list. It's also a one-of in our list, but it actually was a late game addition, one of the final pieces I added to the puzzle that actually just made everything work extremely well. Let me tell you why. This filled the problem that I was having with 1, not having selected advantage for my waiting room if they weren't Takina and Chisato in name, and 2, fixing the issue that I would have when I reveal the top card of my deck as a result of the 2-2 and seeing a climax. Oftentimes, there might be situations where I need to brainstorm first to see the outcome of the brainstorm before I make further decisions during the turn. But if I brainstorm already and then I make my decision to use the 2-2 event and I salvage like a finisher and some other Chisato, I reveal the top card of my deck, it's a climax, I have no further way to move through my deck anymore, and worst of all, I know it's getting blind stocked because of the 2-1 dual laner. And that was like so killer for me, right? It's such a big issue because like it's one thing to like blind stock 6 and you maybe do some averages like, hey, let's say like I'll probably blind stock 1 or 2, maybe 3 if I'm unlucky. It's another to knowingly see a climax there, and for your opponent to see that there's a climax there, and for you to then just throw it in your stock and it's just buried 8 cards deep with the 6 blind stocks and your 2 attacks. So that was just unacceptable to me. After reviewing the issue I had with that line of play, the solution was this card, which allows me to on play discard a character, draw the climax, and then also on play discard the climax to salvage any character I was looking for. So this one card that I basically always prioritize grabbing when I use the 2-2 event just solves the is the contingency plan, is our solution to when things go south with the top check. And obviously it also just is a way for discard out so that I can throw my climaxes back in my deck before refresh and to grab things that I normally can't grab, the non-Chisato Takina names. Next up, another Chisato contingency card is this level 0 Chisato Reverser. She has the level 0 Reverser effect, but it's fine. The other effect that she has is why we use it. It's pay 1, start up, send to waiting room, top check up to 4, and add up to 1 character. Again, this is just another solution to some of the issues we might have. Some extra deck speed on demand. Being able to grab the top card of our deck is actually really nice. If we reveal if we reveal with our 2-2 event, maybe like one of our tech cards or like another copy of our finisher on the top, something that we want, right? This could also just act as another way to grab that card. Now, in that particular scenario, this Chisato is actually better than this Chisato. Because while we could just play this Chisato, discard a card, draw one, and just draw that card, the issue is she occupies a body on the board when we need to dual lane, right? So this is actually fairly inconvenient. If I'm at level 2 and I haven't played my dual laners yet, I play this first, and then I would just need to play over it. However, if it's like my second turn of dual laners, I actually can't really play it on the open slot. I kind of have to just like play it elsewhere. So like that is sometimes an issue. But using this, there's really no issue. Because we can play this, pay one, sack herself, do whatever we need to do with the top check, and then our end goal is still the dual laner attacks, right? So another way to just solve problems in regards to our deck state, the top cards of our deck, so on and so forth. Most importantly, it is still Chisato, so if you think that something like that is a problem potentially, you grab that in advance with a 2-2 event, and then you go about your day. Next, we do have just one copy of the level 0 Fuki. One of the best cards in Lycoris Recoil. Definitely a card that is just super rude. She has the ability where whenever any of my characters direct attacks, choose one of my opponent's front rows and they get minus 1000. Also, startup, I can send this card from stage to clock to top check up to 4 and add up to any one traded character. So, again, if I do see this at level 0, it just means I basically can't lose the level 0 game. It can also incidentally kill deny on reverse effects, things like level 0 I from Oshinoko, and the related sorts, right? It's also just there in case it's a way for me to be able to look at 4 cards in the early game for quote unquote free. Early game, we do consider damage to be a resource, so that by using the clock, I can look at 4 more cards to really find the pieces I need to have a good early to mid game. Lastly, we run one copy of Mizuki Climax Swapper. Now, why this Climax Swapper instead of the Takina Climax Swapper, which is on play pay 1, discard a Climax, salvage a Climax, and also has the beneficial extra effect of being able to pop one of my opponent's front row levels, cost 0 lowers, as long as that is the only character in the front row. This Mizuki is just a Troll deck Climax Swapper, and its Climax Swap effect, or cost, is sack one of my other characters and discard a Climax to salvage a Climax. So originally, I did run the Takina version. However, I was really upset in one of my test games where I had clean cut both father figures and oh wait, no, sorry. Oh yes. Okay, so I had both father figures, and I really wanted to try lane, right? But the only other 0 I had left was the Takina Climax Swapper, which normally, if it was just a regular attacker, fine, so be it. The really niche issue I came across was, assuming this was my turn 1 and they went first, I'm going second, I want to tri-field as soon as possible. I don't want to tri-field with both father figures clean cut because I can only save one of them and I need these guys to live for at least one more turn. I can't play the Takina because it just kills my opponent's character, and thus I can't clean cut. So that one particular situation came up in my testing, in my shadow playing, and I could not run that card anymore. Like, that card was dead to me. Okay, so besides that kind of niche situation, there is also the fact that in this deck, it actually is not that big of a deal to sack one of our characters instead of paying 1 stock. If anything, stock is the premium here in our deck, right? The more stock we have, we can efficiently use 14, 15, 16, 17 stock very well. So every stock extra that we have is potentially another extra line of play that we can do. So this is why we chose the Mizuki Climax Swapper instead of the Takina Climax Swapper. So that's the entirety of our level 0 game. We have 21 zeros, 4, 8, 10, 14, 17, 20, 21. Moving on to the level 1. Besides our level 1 Climax combo with the door, we only have one other level 1 card, and it's this level 1 Mizuki. It's a level 1 reverser, so again, it'll help in the matchups where, you know, maybe your 1-0s can't contest, or generally you can't contest one lane because the father figure Shinji can pump 2k. This is 6-5 by itself with Climax combo, so 8-5 is going to be able to contest most things. The Mizuki is really good because it allows you to reverse like just big 1-1s or 1-0s. Like maybe if your opponent's playing like Chainsaw Man and they have the 3 large men, you can kill one of the 3 large men. You can just safely reverse like 1-1 Nino Climax combos, or have a way to reverse multiple Nino 1-1 Climax combos if you don't draw copies of the Climax combo. But most importantly, her second effect is actually the main reason why we play this card. She's a helmet. Startup, we can discard a card from our hand and put this on the bottom of our deck and then salvage any character. That line is extremely important. The ability to salvage any character. Throughout the course of the video so far, I've talked about a lot of issues with not being able to salvage non-Chisato Takina names. The Brainstorm, Fuki is not grabbable, Mizuki's Climax Swapper is not grabbable. Obviously, she herself is not grabbable, but if we get her in hand, she then becomes anything else. So this card is massively crucial. There is also the slight synergy based off of her sending herself to the bottom of our deck, that we know that this is clean when we blind stock the last card of our deck. If we do go into a dual leader turn and we have a small deck left, we know for certain this card is what it is. So we can use that knowledge to just have more information about our blind stocks. Level 2. We have our 4 dual laners and our 3 events. This is a non-negotiable 4-off. In the early game, especially before we get to level 2 and we can use our events, we have like no sculpting. We have the pay 1 Amagi when we play a Climax, that's a top check up to 4. But outside of that, we really need to find 2 copies of this. So we want to maximize the odds of us finding 2 copies naturally. And if we find 2 copies naturally, then the 2-2 event we can save for later, and we can potentially use that to salvage more important Takinas like our finisher. 4 copies of the dual laner, 3 copies of the 2-2 event. I only tested this card at 3 because I thought 3 was the perfect ratio of what I wanted. The reason why we're not playing 4, despite it being such an important card for our main game plan, is because 1, the level 1 Climax combo has the ability to find and grab it. 2, we only really need to see 1 during the course of the game. Sometimes we can resolve 2 and that's fine, but generally 1 is enough. And 3, perhaps most importantly, remember that the cost that we have to pay on the level 3 Takina has to discard 2 traded characters. If we clock draw 2 for our final turn and then we draw into one of these events and we don't have the stock to play the event and get rid of it on our hand, and that results in us not being able to pay cost for multiple Takinas, that's GG, right? So we're playing just the right number so that we can always find one with high probability in just one game, 1 copy per 1 game, and we don't want to run more because we don't actually want to draw more than 1 copy most of the time. Other level 2s, we do run, aforementioned, we run 1 copy of Free Fetch Counter. Free Fetch Counter is really nice because it is oftentimes a card that I do look for. Not only does it protect our dual laners so that we don't have to go through the trouble of potentially finding another 2-1 to go into the second turn of dual laning, but also it can pay out climaxes that we trigger and potentially free fresh us if we have an inkling that our stock is really dirty, if our deck is really free, or if we just know with our 2 triggers we trigger a door and then we can salvage the counter and then we're just all Gucci. Right, so it does give us that extra bit of defensive survivability. This deck does not run healers, so this is basically the only defensive card we have, but this card has saved the game for me on multiple occasions. Last level 2 is a copy of the 2/1 Mizuki. This is the 1 Climax Fumio. On play, we can pay 1 discard 1 for our opponent to choose 1 Climax in the waiting room. Everything else except that 1 Climax goes back into the deck. Great decompression tool. Allows our opponent to potentially go from being hyper compressed to, alright, you have like 7 in like 30 now, you know, compared to like maybe 7 in 15, 7 in 20. You could be like, hey, you know, I have a much better chance of sticking my damage. Again, not Takina or Chisato named, so it's really important for us to plan ahead and grab these pieces just in case the opportunity pops up. Sometimes I will have an opportunity, maybe I'm overhand, and I will use the level 1 bomb to sculpt into one of my tech pieces and just kind of hold it. The act of sculpting it can also just strike fear in my opponent's hearts. Worst case, we don't need it, and then it can just be part of our discard for our level 3. So, speaking of level 3s, we do run the 4 of Takina Climax combo. The best companion to the Takina is the Musashi. This Kurumi and Chisato is once per turn when this card's battle damage dealt is cancelled during the turns played. I mill the top card of my deck and then burn my opponent for X+1, the level of the card milled. On play, also, I get to refund a stock from my waiting room as long as I have a full board. Double Takina plus Kurumi Chisato is 8 stock. It's actually really cheap. Because you play 2 Takinas, you go down to 4 stock. You play the Musashi as your last character, you go down to 2 stock, you refund 1 from her effect to 3 stock, you play the StockSoul that goes to 4 stock, and that gives you just enough stock to pay for the stock cost of double Takina. So if you think about it, 8 stock for burn 3-4 times plus a Musashi is actually very respectable. Most importantly, it has Chisato name. So all the more reason why this 2/2 event is such a crucial card in the deck. If I have my dual laners ready, I have my back row ready, all my resources are set up, I'm thinking that final turn is the turn of truth that I need to pop off. Play the 2/2 event, grab 2 of your final game pieces. Finally, last card of the deck, we run 1 copy of Cafe LycoReco Kurumi. On play, we can either stock shuffle our opponent, send all of our opponent's stock into their deck, they shuffle the deck, and then restock from top deck the same number of cards they shuffled in. I can either do that, or I can bounce one of my opponent's characters. Really, really good card. Very flexible 1-card dual mode card. If my opponent is playing something like Shauna Anti-Burn, I can bounce their 1/1. If my opponent is just really compressed with a lot of stock, I can do, you know, we have the traditional stock swap Fumio, it's stock wash Fumio in this instance. Another card that you kind of just want to keep in your back pocket. If you have the opportunity to keep in hand, you definitely keep it around. And it can be the difference maker between your finisher sticking the 3s and your opponent like canceling 7 times. And that's the list. This is the 50 card list. I'm very happy with the choices in here in terms of just one, having my main goal be realized of just using a competitive LycoReco, or as competitive as it can be, LycoReco deck using the father figures. 2, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the cards I want to play, and then figuring out how to, again, fix or shore up the weaknesses and how to take advantage of the strengths. The strengths being extremely lethal finisher, extremely aggressive high floor level 0 game. Weaknesses, lack of hand fix, 2/2 event, 1-0 combo. Lack of sometimes hand size, that can just be solved again with a 2-2 event. This is just a straight plus. 1 card becomes 2. Later down the line, we can brainstorm with Chisato. She can find us our climaxes. Sometimes we'll incidentally just play StockSoul, and that can just be an extra stock. No on-play effect. Who needs to heal when we just kill them? Again, the deck runs no healers, period. I can't remember the last time I built a deck with no healers. But when you look at LycoReco's card pool, the healers are like very not great. You have the early play Chisato healer, that's just 8k in our deck because we don't run the Takina JC. You have some level 3 healers, they don't offer anything of value to our game plan. And again, this deck either just kills them when we hit level 3, or half the time we'll just die from level 2. Sometimes we will hit level 3, we're not ready, I go for another turn of dual laners, and then I'll die from level 3, maybe like 3-1, 3-2. But in those cases, running 1 or 2 healers in a deck would not have saved me anyways. So I kind of realized that you just don't need healers. They're just way too marginal in the deck. Oftentimes, 1 heal is not going to be the difference between game win and game loss. If I was behind, I would just need to cancel the attacks that they're doing rather than heal 1 and just hoping that they just don't do enough damage. So that's the reason why we don't play healers. Okay, so that was the thought process of putting the deck. Now, how does the deck play out, right? One of the kind of things I realized as I tested this shell and I was making my iterations, swapping cards in and out and testing, I realized that I really don't care about my hand quality as long as I get father figures. Let me explain that. So normally in a Weiss game, we would most likely in our opening mulligan, if we see our level 1 climax combo and climax, we're most likely going to hold like a copy of the climax and the climax combo. If we see like a really good brainstorm that we're just going to plop down in the backrow the whole game, we save that. As I tested, as I shadow played, opened my hands, like I go through 20, 30, 40, 50 iterations of just what my first 2 turns go through. Finish my 2 turns, pack everything up, redo it again. Efficient way to test your opening mulligans and your opening theory. What I realized is that all I need is to open father figures. So in that sense, 100% of the time, or 99% of the time, I'm pitching everything like this. I'm pitching my level 1 climax, I'm pitching my level 1 climax combo, obviously I'm going to pitch stock. So I'm pitching everything, literally this entire stack. If I don't already have guaranteed father figure pieces, it's mulliganed. Now, that might seem a bit extreme, but let me tell you why that turned out to be the way that this deck succeeds. If I get father figures, barring certain matchups where maybe they'll have like Kakuta's Chaser, or like Chasers overall do pretty decently against this build because they can run away from my single target very high power lane to another lane. That's not going to stop me from tri-laning, but it does give them more resources to work with. Outside of that though, normally I just abuse clean cut as often as possible. If I open Chisato +1 father, then I consider the hand to be ready. I just need any other 0, and that's just tri-field time, even on turn 1. But if I open these 3, or like these 3, like these are variable, right? But these 3 set of cards, then this is perfect. This is the ideal level 0. So in that sense, you can consider this to be either fairly easy to mulligan for. This is a 4 of, this is a 6 of, and this is a 4 of, or you can consider it to be You know, you need 3 cards specifically on your first turn in order to maximize your potential. So I'm always going to be happy with opening Chisato Father Figure, but if I want to really get ahead of the game, I also want to clean cut. So sample hand of something like this, or like maybe something like this, right? One might initially think, keep these. I have a Climax Swapper, I have a Climax so that I can swap into my door level 1, and then I have a level 1 door combo. And I also open my Father Figures. I'm basically always mulliganing 3 here. I would only start keeping cards if I also opened a clean cut. Because the difference between opening Father Figures Chisato and opening Father Figures Chisato clean cut is extremely large. Like, this is just super abusable. So to that sense, if I am not seeing literally all 3 of these cards in my hand, I still mulligan very aggressively. That being said, I mentioned 99% of the time I mulligan Climax combo. The 1% would be if I'm going second, my opponent mulligans first. I see that they're playing Standby. I see that they're playing Nino, or maybe I have an inkling that they're playing Nino. You know, maybe it's a friend. I know what they're playing. Then I would highly consider keeping the Climax, but I would most likely still drop the level 1 combo. Because it is a 4-of, as long as I find one, I'm gonna stun their one backrow. The other backrow is probably just gonna be the Nino Brainstorm. So 1 copy is enough. Again, what I realized from testing this is that most of my advantage is just inherent in this package. Father Figures Clean Cut is just +1 every turn for clean cutting, plus another one for the pay 1 Encore. Every time I play any sort of Climax, I can pay 1 Amagi, so that helps me recuperate the hand that I lost from playing a Climax and being aggressive with soul pushing. I think from my 8 games at Pasadena, I went 6-1 in Swiss and I lost in top 32. I think 3 of those games I resolved Climax combo. 3 out of 8 games. With a 6-2 record, I resolved copies of Takina Chisato. One of those games, I purposely held the 1-0s because I knew I was playing against Ace Standby Nino. The other games, I already just hard mulligan for my Father Figures. I got the Father Figures, and then throughout my next 2 turns, I just naturally drew into one level 1 and Climax combo. But in the majority of games, once I am hard mulliganing to find these, I don't expect nor do I need these to come back to my hand. If anything, I kind of just want to see the Climax. I want to see any Climax, because I can get advantage off of Mika's pay 1 Amagi effect to have that little bit of deck speed, have that soul push potential. And essentially what I think of the 2-2 event is I think of it as sort of 7 copies of the 2-2 events. Sort of, right? Because obviously having the 1-0 combo activate is no guarantee of finding the 2-2 combo, but I only need 1 copy of the 2-2. Anytime past Mulligan stage, once I have my back row set up, I just, you can obviously start keeping your 2-2s, right? But even in the mulligan, I mull the 2-2 because if I mull 1-2-2, I still think I probably have like 5.5 copies of the 2-2 left in my deck. So I'm still fairly likely to draw it. And that's basically what happened. In my 8 games of Pasadena, there was never a single time when I didn't see a copy, or at least 1 copy of the 2-2. So it just turned out very well. Aggressively mulliganing in this deck is extremely important because you need to find your level 0 game. And everything else will just come very naturally through just the deck's construction. So, early game, we play hyper aggressively. Level 1 game, if we have 1-0 combo and 1-0 Climax combo and combo, we do. If not, that's fine. What's most important is we need to plan for our level 2 game. So we are needing to find the 2 copies of our dual laners. We want to start prepping for some opportunities to hold some important key pieces. Move our back row to become this instead of double Father Figures. This Mika is really important. In certain scenarios, where you might have too much stock from your dual laners, or you might have extra stock from dual laners, but you might not have enough hand. When you play the StockSoul, you can just use any of your extra stock to just pay 1 Amaki, and that can be the difference between you having your 4 character discards, or maybe sometimes you triple Takina, your 6 character discards, or not having it, right? So that's why I keep the Mika around and not the Shinji, which by himself is not bad. Tap itself, give 2k. It can potentially help one of my 2-1 Takinas become 12k, challenge some early plays and stuff, whatever. Not super important. At that point in the game, you don't really care about killing the board. You just care about the deck states and the damage situation. So early game, we push a lot. Mid game, transitioning into mid game, we find a good opportunity to transition our back row into this. And then after that, it becomes a game where our early game is completely aggro. We kill all of our opponent's characters as often as possible, into this mid game where we intentionally are not attacking and killing all of our characters, and we need to be as careful as possible about pushing damage. We need to be careful because if we hit level 3 and they potentially have their finishers ready, they can kill us from level 2. Weiss is a very aggressive game, right? A lot of modern finishers have the ability to just wipe us out from level 2. Not to mention the fact that these blind stocks could just be really dirty. So we don't want to give our opponent any funny ideas, give them the ability to hit level 3 and just go into finisher turn, and for us to just, our win rate just goes from like 80% to like 10%, right? So side when possible, this is the TRV way, control your damage and go from there. Generally speaking, you are okay if you only have 1 turn of dual laners. Generally speaking, you will be able to have like 9-10 stock if you have 1 turn, which is still enough to go into double Takina and Musashi. If you have 10 stock, you guaranteed have 2-2 salvage into double Takina Musashi. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get a stock refund, and that technically just costs 9 stock, but you want to have 10 stock to be safe. Any extra stock you can use on things like the stock shuffler. You can use the 2-1 decompressor, the Fumio Mizuki. Of course, as long as you have the hand. Hopefully you hit some lucky brainstorms, maybe you hit 1 or 2. You also will just be aggressively brainstorming the majority of turns in the mid game, because you do eventually need to find copies of a copy of your StockSoul, right? So in my experience, hand is really not an issue, compounded by the fact that we actually just normally have +1 hand compared to normal Weiss decks at level 2, because we're only playing 2 characters and not 3 characters, right? So like at level 2, you generally just have like 6 or 7 cards already at the end of your turn, because you're dual laning and you never play 3 characters. After that, it's about sculpting for hand quality. Oftentimes, if I am overhand, I have the opportunity to use the Mizuki, bottom deck it, salvage something really important to me that I think I'll need next turn, maybe like a climax swap or the decompression tools, or maybe sometimes even my brainstorm, right? Just depends on the situation at hand. But with all of these pieces combined, I was very happy to have found a list that maybe not the most consistently, but is able to very reliably pull off Takina finisher. Like every single game I had where I went into my final turn, it was minimum double Takina. Most of the time it was double Takina Musashi. Sometimes it was double Takina and the stock shuffler, just because I didn't have enough hand or resources to play the Musashi, or I couldn't fix for it. One game I just had triple Takina. One game I had triple Takina, play climax, had 6 characters to discard. They just died. Like burn 3 swing, burn 3 swing, burn 3 swing. Like you're just dead, right? So that's I wonder how long this video's been. That's basically how I got to this deck here. 6-1 in Swiss. My loss was to 8 Pants Slime. And Slime is just, again, Slime is one of the best decks in the game still. Slime is just not a very good matchup for Lycoris Recoil for this particular build. Why is it not? 8 Pants in particular, its main game plan is something that is very bad for this deck because it keeps damage parity. The level 0 remove combo incentivizes them to try lane and play Climax every turn. At level 2, they play Murons. Murons are naturally bigger than my 2-1 Takina, so it's really hard for me to have these around to reliably do a double dual lane turn. They have the level 0 Milim stock swap, and that just, like, if they think my stock is clean, they make that dirty. And if they think my stock is dirty, then I'm probably just dead, right? And it's really difficult for me to keep them at level 2 because they have Potion Maker that allows them to heal. They can go for easy lines with Potion Maker, 3-2 Shuna Healer. They can heal twice per turn. They can also just clock themselves up really easily with Rimu Riki. They have Helmet. They have so many tools to just manipulate the clock at level 2 so that if they want to hit level 3, they can. If they want to heal down, they can as well. Not a good matchup. That game was very aggressive, and it just turned out that I was not ready to go into my finisher turn. I needed one more turn, and then they forced themselves to level 3, and then they killed me with their Benimarus. Top 8, my second loss of the day was to Spy Family, 8 Pants. I was doing well until I wasn't. Something that I told myself going into Pasadena was, I'm going to live and die by my blind stocks. This deck needs, for the most part, to blind stock as its main game plan. My top 8, I died because I blind stocked 3 Climaxes and I did not know if the last 2 cards in my deck were clean or it had any of the 3 Climaxes that that were missing. I was 5 out, none in hand, like 10 stock, 2 cards in deck. At level 3, they were swinging for 4. I just had to take the gamble of, do I free fresh, go back in deck with 5, or do I try to take the damage and hope that one of these last 2 cards in my deck was not had a Climax? But it turned out I blind stock 3. It's okay. No, this is the risk you take with the dual laner package, and it's definitely the reason why people don't play this card. But I found a way to make it work. Combination of just knowing my matchups, knowing what my opponent has available at various stages, levels in the game, just using my knowledge of all the meta decks to my advantage, and the deck overperformed. Yeah, I honestly could not say with a straight face that I was expecting this deck to do anywhere near an X1 finish. And it wasn't even like a close X1 finish. Like, the games that I won were kind of blowouts, honestly. It's kind of scary how, to the letter, this deck performed in terms of my theory, shadow playing it, and then envisioning how it would work in a tournament against actual like competition, and then it actually working the way it did. My level 0 game got me ahead in basically the majority of my games. I was never in a damage deficit for the majority of my games outside of the 8 Pants Slime deck. Hit level 2, go into the completely opposite way, resource generation, control the level. I hit level 3 first, you blow them out with 3-2 Takinas. And very happy to report that it did work. Alright. I think that's about it. I think that's everything I had to say about this deck. I could reiterate on it a bit more, but I think I'm just going to wait for Lycoris Premium to come out. Lycoris Premium has a lot of really cool cards that I want to try out. And obviously that set is but several months away for English. So hopefully we get to revisit this archetype, maybe see if it can be even better than it is now. But I'm really happy. I'm very ecstatic that I was able to do something that I enjoy about Weiss Schwarz the most, and the reason why I fell in love with the game. Deck building is my favorite part of Weiss Schwarz. Having a concept that I want to test, package of cards I want to build around, and putting the rest of my deck together to accommodate what I want to play, even if that means going off kilter, off meta, off the popular, the more walked upon path. And the result is what you guys see. You know, a lot of people are probably haven't played this Climax split in their life. A lot of people probably haven't played the father figures. So be creative, guys. Think outside the box. Don't be afraid to try new things, try new concepts. Maybe there's something there. You never know. So yeah, on behalf of all the Lycoris Recoil players worldwide, I got one for the Lycoris team, guys. So this has been Mike on the Tressa's Collectibles channel. Coming up, we have tons of content for you guys. We have Pasadena commentary going live in a couple days, hopefully. And then we're going to have Bunny Girl Senpai content, obviously, this upcoming Friday. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you. Bye.